Hello student, welcome to EPG Pathshala on Biophysics. I am Professor Dhananjay Bhattacharya of Shah Institute of Nuclear Physics, Kolkata. I am now the head of Computational Science Division, but before that I was in Biophysics Division for a long time. Now in this series of lectures, you have learned quantum mechanics, how it can be used for understanding the electronic spectra of hydrogen atom, how it can be used to calculate potential energies of different molecules or different molecular conformations, and then you have used that how to apply these to calculate partial charges of different atoms of proteins, and then these partial charges, they interact in a protein which have huge number of atoms, and then we have to also consider the solvation, the water molecules surrounding these proteins, and then we learned how to obtain the good structure, the best structure possibly from a local initial guess structure, and this was obtained by energy minimization procedure. We found that energy minimization procedure is not very effective in finding out the real best structure, because the good structure, whatever we obtain from an initial guess, that is local to that best, that good initial guess structure. But in case of protein, there are many minimas, many good structures possible, and all of them, scanning all of them is impossible by energy minimization procedure. And then we thought that we understood that these structures, they will function at a physiological temperature, room temperature or body temperature. At that body temperature, all these atoms have different amount of kinetic energies. All these atoms are having velocities, they are moving around because of the thermal heat of the environment or of our system, and these energies, kinetic energies, will not restrict the molecules to the base structure only. They will remain in the base structure maybe for a long time, but they will go to the other not so good structures also for some time, and they will sometime overcome the energy barriers between the base structure and the local and somewhat smaller, lower energy or lower stability structures also. These all these structures can be scanned by Monte Carlo simulation. We have discussed that in earlier lecture. But Monte Carlo simulation can be used if I have a few number of variables, such as if I have a protein and a ligand, the ligand can be rotated by 3 degrees of freedom, or the ligand can be translated with respect to each other. So if I have a rigid protein and a rigid ligand, we can apply Monte Carlo simulation. But if I have a flexibility within the protein or flexibility within the ligand, such as when the ligand comes, the protein expands like this, in that case, we cannot do Monte Carlo simulation to understand the structural properties of the protein-ligand complex. In those cases, we have to consider that all these atoms formed by the ligand and protein, they are moving each other together. This can be obtained by one thing called molecular dynamics simulation. We are going to learn molecular dynamics simulation in this lecture. So, objective of this lecture is to show how proper sampling of phase space by altering all degrees of freedom can be done. This can overcome potential energy barriers to reach the global energy minimum conformation also. But we are more interested on sampling of phase space following thermodynamic criteria to obtain average property. So we will do molecular dynamics simulation to vary all the atomic positions to obtain all the conformations and to obtain a better average quantity. So we have defined earlier the potential energy, which contains the bond stretching part, bond angle bending part, torsional energies, then van der Waals energy, the long range interaction, the Coulombic energy, but mostly we ignore the optional parts such as hydrogen bonding energy. Considering these 5 energy terms, then we can calculate energy of a molecule. Now, the energy of the molecule can also be differentiated with respect to XYZ coordinates of all the atoms, because the energy is only function of XYZ coordinates. So bond length can be differentiated, bond angle energy can be differentiated, and we can say that in the conservative system, the energy depends only on the positional variable, and in our potential energy definition, this means it is a conservative system. The conservative system examples are gravitational force, electric force, etc. And in these cases, the derivative of energy with respect to the positional coordinates give us the force. There are obviously non-conservative system also in the biological situations, or in the living cell in the other situations also, such as damped motion, viscosity effect, and etc. We will discuss about those in the subsequent lectures, but in this present lecture we will concentrate on conservative force, where force can be obtained as the first derivative of energy as given by these. Now, since energy is function of all the XYZ coordinates, so we have defined a grad operator. Normally the grad operator works on XYZ coordinates of a single atom, single particle, but in our case we defined grad operator as differential coefficient of energy with respect to first atom's x, differential coefficient of energy with respect to the second atom's x, differential coefficient of energy with respect to the third atoms of x, and all these are in the x direction, so we have added the unit vector I. Similarly, we have differential coefficient of the first atom's y, differential coefficient of the second atom's y, differential coefficient of the third atom's y, and etc. And these are all with respect to the added with the j, the second y-axis unit vector along the y-axis, and similarly with the unit vector of z-axis we differentiate with respect to the z components of all the atoms. All these forces can be calculated. Now consider a simple system of two water molecules. So in two water molecules, we can say that force is equal to minus first derivative of energy minus grad E, or we can say force equal to mass into dv dt, the rate of change of velocity with respect to time. Or we can also say that force is equal to mass into second derivative of position with respect to time. So that means this is acceleration, so force is equal to mass into acceleration, or force equal to mass into first derivative differential coefficient of velocity with respect to time. Now this energy in this case will depend on first oxygen atom's XYZ coordinates, the second oxygen atom's XYZ coordinate. So unlike the previous situation where we have 3n minus 6 degrees of freedom, here we have to consider all n degrees of freedom. All these atomic positions are involved in the energy, and so we have to differentiate energy with respect to all these coordinates. So there are 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus, so in principle there are in this case there are 6 atoms, so 6 into 3, 18 variables are there in this situation. So in other words, we have to calculate potential energy with respect to the bond stretching, the bond of the first OH, O1, H1, then similar terms for H2 and angle and second oxygen and all the hydrogens and so on. This is one energy, that is the bond stretching energy, but we also have to consider the non-bonded interaction, that is interaction between this hydrogen and this oxygen, the van der Waals and electrostatic interaction between this hydrogen and this hydrogen, interaction between this hydrogen, interaction between this oxygen and this oxygen, and all those things. And then we can differentiate the potential with respect to the XYZ coordinates. So this equation is not a complicated equation. We can simply differentiate with respect to XO of first oxygen atom as this way. That means this is the distance between the first oxygen and first hydrogen, minus B0, this is a constant, we have the Kb, the force constant, as constant, and then divided by the square root of the distance, and then x0 minus xh1. Similarly, if we differentiate with respect to the y of this, we will get a y0 minus yh11. And then similarly z0 minus zh11. So this will be the component of force due to deformation of this bond length. So similarly, we will have component of force due to different variation of this bond length. And then we will have component of the force because of variation of this distance. So this distance will give rise to my non-bonded interaction, that means van der Waals and electrostatics. That means we have to consider the force due to this bond length variation and also this distance variation, non-bonded distance variation. All these forces has to be added together. We may have force due to bond angle distortion also. So H11, O1, H12, this bond angle, when we add the bond angle variation energy or angle bending term, so we have to differentiate with respect to x1, xh11, xh1, yh12, yh11, etc. So all those forces will be coming here. So we will have all these different terms giving rise to my total grad E or derivative of energy. Now this derivative of energy can be used to solve the differential equation. Now we have a differential equation that is minus grad E is equal to m d2x dt2, and we have the variable of x on my left hand side and variable of y, differential coefficient of y, at the right hand side. This kind of differential equation can be solved, but we can solve it only by numerically, as shown here, that differential equation is similar to integration, and integration can be done on pen and paper, but all functions cannot be integrated by pen and paper. Some functions can be integrated within limits or by special functions such as gamma function, but most functions can be integrated numerically. Now, what is numerical integration? We can think of a line which is a curved line, and we want to find out the area under this curved line and the x-axis. If we want to find out that area under the curve, that can be done by integration, but this curved line cannot be expressed as a simple sine theta or cos theta or x to the power 3 or y to the power 3 or something like that. So in that case, since this equation, the curve equation is not a straightforward equation, we can solve it by iterative method. What is that method? We can approximately find out the area under this small part. So what is the area? Area is the area of the rectangle and area of this triangle. So we can approximate that this region, although it is a curved, but since these two points are not far from each other, we can consider this as a straight line. So if we consider this as a straight line, then this part becomes a triangle. We can easily calculate the area of a triangle by half of the vertical length and the horizontal length. So by that we can calculate the area of the triangle and then add the area of this rectangle. The area of this rectangle is unique. There is no approximation. But for area of the triangle, we made an approximation that this region is a straight line. But this region is not really a straight line if I consider 2 points quite far from each other. But if we consider these 2 points quite close to each other, that means we reduce the value of h, then we can definitely make an approximation that this region is a straight line. So if we make small h, we'll need more calculation, but our value will be more accurate. Small h, in that case, approximate the curve as a straight line. But small h will accumulate more errors also, because in the computer we have a fixed precision. So if we make small values of h, then we have to make many calculations. Each of these calculations will lead to some error, and we will have to totally accumulate all these errors to calculate really the integration. So we have to go to an optimum value of h for which we can calculate sufficiently accurately total integration area. So this the above method is one of the simplest method, which is called trapezoidal method for integration. There are other methods such as Runge-Kutta method, Simpson's method, predictor corrected method, Monte Carlo method, as discussed in the previous lecture when we calculated the area under a circle to calculate the value of pi. But there are other methods also. One of the method we will be using, we use the Taylor series expansion. Now we can expand position. Since we are interested in this molecular dynamics simulation about the positions of the atoms, we can approximately tell position of a atom after a delta t interval is equal to the position of the atom at t0th position time step plus delta t into first derivative of position with respect to time, which is actually velocity at t0 time, plus half or 1 by 2 factorial delta t square into second derivative of position with respect to time again at t0 time, plus 1 by 3 factorial delta t cube into third derivative of position with respect to time again at t0 time. Now if we neglect this, then this becomes equal to our well-known equation of motion, that is x equal to x0 plus velocity into t plus half into acceleration into t square. So this is actually acceleration and this is the velocity term. So we have the simple well-known thing, that is x0 equal to x equal to x0 plus vt plus half ft square arising out of the Taylor series expansion. Now the question is again coming back to the increment. What will be our increment delta t, or what will be our increment h in the trapezoidal method of integration? So I told you earlier that large time step may not follow the linearity principle. So we had considered that region is linear for small h value, or in this case also second derivative of energy or third derivative of energy, this may not be linear for delta t value of large value, and very small time step if we make, we will accumulate more error. So what is the optimal time step? If I show this movie, which we showed once again earlier, that in our molecular systems we have several vibrational motions taking place, and as like shown in this situation, this vibration is making the ch distance larger and smaller, and generally these vibrations occur at a frequency of 3200 to 3600 centimeter inverse. This corresponds to a time period of 9.8 femtosecond. Other vibrations are much smaller vibrations such as water liberation, NH stretch, etc., whose time period is larger. The highest or smallest time period is for CH, NH or OH bond stretching, which are quite small. That is, these vibrations take place within 9.8 femtosecond. Now, if I want to measure the average bond length, for example, which is equivalent to measuring the average position of this simple pendulum. So we can measure the average position of a simple pendulum by some measurement, such as clicking several pictures of the simple pendulum after a time period. So we have a, say, for example, the camera can take a picture every after 2.3 seconds. So if we take several pictures, 100 pictures by a camera, and then take the position from the camera of these pendulum's motion, then it will appear that the first picture was taken when the pendulum was at this point. The second picture was taken when the pendulum was at this point. The third picture was taken when the pendulum was at this point. The fourth one when the pendulum here. Fifth one when the pendulum here, and so on. Because this pendulum is moving fast and we are taking a picture at a rather slow camera, then the average position of the pendulum will appear here, which is definitely a wrong estimate, because we know that the average position of the pendulum is always at this point. So we made this mistake, or we made this wrong estimation, because we had taken a large time period. So if we had taken a camera, a better camera, which will allow me to click every after 1/10 of a second, or 1/10 of one full motion, that means one movement, one complete movement of the pendulum, then we would not make such mistake, because in that case we will make one measurement here, the next measurement will be here, the next measurement will be here, and so on. And so we will measure everything proper time, and then we will do the proper measurement of the average position of the pendulum. So in all these cases, what is recommended is that we have to make the time step at least 1/10 of the time period. Now our time period of the motion of CH bond or NH bond, as I showed in earlier slide, is 9.8 femtosecond. So we have to make the time period as 1 femtosecond, or 10 to the power minus 15 second. So we can make smaller time step also, but if we make even smaller time step, such as 10 to the power minus 16 or 10 to the power minus 17 second, we will accumulate more and more error. And if we make larger time step, then we will do mistake in measurement. So considering the time step, what we can say, that we can estimate the position at t0 plus delta t as RT plus delta t into dr dt, which is equivalent to velocity, plus 1 by 2 factorial, or 1 by 2 delta t square into d2r dt2, that means the second derivative of position, that means acceleration, plus smaller terms. Why these are smaller terms? Because these involve delta t to the power 3 or delta t to the power 4, etc. And delta t is 10 to the power minus 15. So delta t to the power 3 means 10 to the power minus 45, which is definitely a smaller term. But we need not neglect that. Similarly, we can define r at t minus delta t, because our variations, our ensembles are all reversible. So we can also say r t minus delta t is equal to rt minus delta t into dr dt plus half delta t into d2r dt2 plus smaller terms. Now if we add these two equations, then we will end up with rt plus delta t equal to plus rt minus delta t equal to 2rt0 plus delta t into acceleration. So in this situation, what we can do is we can predict the position at t plus delta t if we know the position at t0 and the position of t0 minus delta t. So if we know the positions of the previous two steps, and if we know the position, we can find out minus grad E, and then we can find out the acceleration, because acceleration is minus grad E by m. So we can predict the position at a later time. So we can do running the simulation, as we can predict the position r t0 plus delta t as 2r of t0 minus r t0 minus delta t plus delta t square by m minus grad E. Then next step, we can predict the position of r t0 plus 2 delta t equal to 2 into r t0 plus delta t minus r of t0 plus delta t square by m minus grad E at t0 plus delta t. Similarly, we can continue, and then we can predict r at t0 plus n delta t, where n is sufficiently large,
as a function of r t0 plus n minus 1 delta t and r t0 plus n minus 2 delta t, and the acceleration or the energy gradient at the previous step t0 minus plus n minus 1 delta t. So if we make n sufficiently large, then we can predict the position after long time. Now in between, we can also calculate the temperature. We need to calculate temperature because we are doing the simulation at a physiological condition. We have to ensure that. And to calculate temperature, we need to calculate the velocities because temperature is related to the velocities. And so we can calculate the velocity as r t plus delta t minus r t minus delta t divided by 2 delta t, because we have these positions of the atoms at these two points. But the problem is the atoms do not move very much by 2 delta t. 2 delta t is actually 2 into 10 to the power minus 15 seconds. So these numerator is very small. These two positions are not significantly different. Similarly, 2 delta t is 10 to the power minus 15, 2 into 10 to the power minus 15. That is also a very small quantity. So dividing a very small quantity by another very small quantity will lead to error, particularly when we are doing this calculation in a computer. So my velocity determination will be erroneous, and so the temperature can also be erroneous. So we cannot really use this principle, which is called Verlet algorithm, for realistic simulation. So what we can do is we can simulate the position as well as velocity together. If we can do that, that can give us better picture. So what to do? We have r t plus delta t equal to rt plus delta t into dr dt, that is the velocity. And similarly, if we can simulate v t plus delta t equal to vt plus delta t into dv dt. dv dt is actually acceleration, and so the acceleration can be obtained as the energy gradient by m. So we can calculate this part also, and we can calculate this part also. So we can run these two simulations simultaneously, but with an error. In all the cases, we have neglected the second part, here also the second part, because we showed earlier that the second part is only delta t square, that means 10 to the power minus 30, which may not be actually negligible. So here we have assumed that both r and v move linearly, very linearly, because we have neglected delta t square and delta t cube and other terms. But that linearity may not be ensured because we have not considered really very small delta t. So what will happen? If we do not do a linearity, then problem appears that in this nonlinear region, if we know the value of x or position and velocity, and we want to predict the position and velocity using this energy gradient at a later time. So if we predict the energy and or velocity at a later time, our prediction will be this. Actually the value is here because this region was nonlinear. If we take energy gradient or the positional gradient or etc. at this point, then also we will make an error of this much in predicting the position or velocity at this point. So the other option is if we can take position and energy gradient at the midpoint. So if we take the position energy gradient or positional gradient dv dt or dx dt at midpoint, in that case our error will be less. So you see that this will be the error or this will be the error. So if we can make an average estimate or some estimate of this, in order to do that, what we do is we simulate the velocity at t plus delta t using the position or energy gradient at t plus half delta t. That means the midpoint between T and T plus delta T. At this point, we are calculating the position or energy gradient. Similarly, when we predict the position at T plus half delta T, that time we make use of the velocity at Tth position. So that means in this curve or in this picture, what we do is at this point we calculate the velocity T minus half delta T. At this point we take the position, and then if we have the position at T0, then we have the energy, we have the energy gradient. Using this energy gradient, we predict the velocity at this point. Using this velocity at this point and the position at this point, we predict the position at this point. If we know the position, we know the energy gradient again. Using this energy gradient, we then predict the velocity at this point, and so on. So what happens is my velocity are defined at this point, half interval at this point, half interval at this point, half interval at this point, and so on. And the positions are measured or calculated at this point, at this point, at this point, at this point, etc. So it is equivalent to a leaping or jumping motion, and so this is called leapfrog algorithm for obtaining position and velocities together, but not at the same time points. Now, using this situation, what we can do is we can calculate the temperature by calculating the v square average, velocity square, but it may happen that at some point of time my velocity is increased or decreased away from the target temperature. Maybe we are interested in simulating system at T0, say T0 is equal to 300 Kelvin, but my temperature, calculated temperature from this equation from the velocities, they appear to be at 100. So in that case, we are shortfall, our systems are moving slowly. So this term will be T0 is 300 and T is 100. So this will be plus 2 and this will be minus 1. So that means this part will be a positive, and then 1 plus something positive, that will give rise to a positive part. So my V will be increased to give a larger velocity. So in this larger velocity, if we substitute in our earlier case, then our temperature will shoot up. Similarly, during simulation, if my temperature is 300 but I calculate the temperature to be 400 or 500 because of velocities, my atoms have started moving at high velocity. In that case, this is 300 and this is 400, so this will be something smaller than 1, and so minus 1, that means this part will be negative. So 1 plus something smaller negative thing, that means this part will be then smaller than 1, and so my velocity v nu will be smaller than the present velocity vj. So we will then substitute this new velocity in the previous equation, newly calculated velocity, something like scaling down the velocities to continue the simulation. At higher temperature, again we have larger velocities. So if we have large velocities, that means this part will be large. So that will indicate that whatever my position was at the previous step will be very much different from my position at the next step. So this will allow me to cross higher energy hills. So at higher temperature, we can do a simulated annealing kind of thing using molecular dynamics simulation, because at higher temperature my positions will vary significantly to go far and far from my initial model structure. So the steps in molecular dynamics simulation is obtain a model structure, then assign force field parameter, add water molecules, neutralize the system by excess charge of ions, then energy minimize the system, heat the system to the desired temperature such as 300 or 298 K, the body temperature, and then simulate by molecular dynamics simulation. So the first parts have been covered earlier. If I start from this situation, heat the system to desired temperature, what will happen that during heating my temperature will slowly rise because of scaling, and then after a while the scaling will stop. When I reach the desired temperature, the temperature will remain constant, nearly constant. During the heating phase, my potential energy will decrease. Initially the potential energy was highly negative. It will become less negative after heating. That means kinetic energy plus potential energy together will be constant. So kinetic energy increased because of velocity increase or temperature increase. So potential energy decreased to give rise the total energy. At this point of time, if I look at the positional fluctuations of the atoms, I see this kind of motion. Root mean square deviation of the atomic positions fluctuate like this. Initially the fluctuation was more, and after a while the fluctuation somewhat plateaued down. So they somewhat remain constant. And here I see that if I consider the full DNA, I had done a simulation of a DNA double helix. If I do a simulation, calculation of RMSD of all the atoms of the DNA, I get larger values. But if I consider the central region, I get smaller values, which is also expressed in this picture, that the atoms at the periphery, at the outermost region, they are more dynamic. They are as shown by the larger spherical size of the atoms. Whereas the atoms at the central region are small, that means they are not moving so much. The atoms of the phosphates move far more, especially the phosphates towards the end. And so if we neglect these atoms, my fluctuations, RMSD, become smaller. Some cases, the RMSDs become larger and larger, so it takes long time. And this is particularly true if we start a model which is far from the actual structure. So if we start a model which has a sequence variation, and we assume their structure to be similar, so in that model, homology model structure, they need longer time to equilibrate, and finally they show some region where the RMS fluctuations nearly plateaued down. So you have to consider which part onward you have to take for average estimation. So you need to consider this region only for estimation of average property. During molecular dynamics simulation, several things happen, such as torsion angles or sugar puckers, etc. They move, they fluctuate a lot. So here I am showing the movement variation of this torsion angle or this ring puckering. So these are also seen to be following a near Gaussian distribution. In crystal also we see a similar situation. These torsion angles also can vary, these and these torsion angles. So we are showing their variation. Also compare that with crystal situation. We can calculate radial distribution function of water. How many waters come close to these atoms or close to these atoms during MD simulation, and that is given by G of R, that is radial distribution function of water molecules near some particular site. We can calculate fluctuation of the base atoms, how the base atoms or the base pair planes move from with respect to each other. So we calculate them, and there also we find some normal distribution or Gaussian distribution kind of thing. So in this lecture, we have learned the molecular dynamics simulation, where each of these atoms are moving in their independent directions. The movement of these atoms are dictated by the gradient of potential energy. So if one atom is
located at some point which is not a stable conformation for that atom, it moves in one direction where the conformation will be more stable. And so if it moves in that direction, it will hit some other atom, or maybe the atom bonded to this, that also will have affected. So they will move, and all these movements, they are coupled movements, they will be dictated by the potential energy and the gradients of potential energy. So we have calculated all these gradients, and then we will calculate their movements, their velocities will be also calculated. These velocities will be used to measure the temperature of the system. So this system velocity temperature can be also controlled, and this method as a whole will give you the total trajectory of the molecule obtained going to different conformations. And this trajectory will sometimes stay in a local energy minima, sometimes it will go to the higher energy and overcome the barrier, go to another local energy minima, and so on. And these has to be analyzed for understanding the total picture, total structure and property of that biomolecule. And so we will be learning in these next lectures how to assign velocities, how to control velocities in different ways, what are the other approximate methods, or what are the other methods to obtain the molecular dynamics, and etc. And so thank you very much.